Welcome to Whispers and Confessions. There might be a twist waiting, so please make sure to watch until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's begin right away.
She took charge exactly as I'd imagined she would. Emily straddled me with practiced grace, setting our rhythm as I followed her lead. Her expertise with foreplay sent me into waves of pleasure I never knew possible, as I became completely caught up in her touch. When her soft breasts brushed against my thighs, every nerve ending in my body lit up at once. Emily moved with natural rhythm, letting out these incredibly sexy little sighs. Her hair cascaded over my chest while the moonlight made her movements look ethereal, making everything feel even more sensual. Hey there, I'm Alec, 32, and my wife Grace is 30. While we don't have kids yet, we're hoping to start a family someday. Grace is this stunning model-like beauty with natural blonde waves and the most infectious smile you've ever seen. What really drew me to her was her amazing personality. She just lights up any room she walks into. I absolutely adore everything about her, from her elegant figure to her graceful presence. Our love story began in grad school, where I was studying computer science while she was pursuing design. We had a romantic first meeting at the campus coffee shop. Her radiant smile and self-assured vibe just knocked me off my feet. What started as simple hellos turned into deep conversations, and before we knew it, we were head over heels. Our connection stayed rock solid after graduation, and 2 years later, we tied the knot. Early in our marriage, Grace was incredibly shy, especially in intimate moments. She'd get all flustered and bashful whenever I made a move, but honestly, I found it absolutely adorable. As time went on, she gradually came out of her shell, though that endearing shyness is still part of her charm. These days, I'm doing really well as a software engineer at a booming Silicon Valley startup with a pretty sweet paycheck. We recently managed to snag our own place in a peaceful California suburb, thanks to some help from our folks. While our home is everything we dreamed of, I can't help but feel the weight of our parents' not-so-subtle hints about grandkids. Our next-door neighbors are Jake and Emily, both 35. Since we all moved in around the same time, we naturally gravitated toward each other as the newbies on the block. Jake's excelling as a senior financial analyst at a Wall Street firm, specializing in tech company investments. He's got this super approachable, friendly vibe that makes him really easy to hang out with, and his industry insights always make for fascinating conversations. Emily has built a successful career as a freelance writer, focusing on lifestyle and travel pieces. She's really making a name for herself, contributing to some major magazines. Working remotely means she's often around, which has led to plenty of neighborly chats. With her shoulder-length auburn hair, she might come across as reserved at first, but get her talking and you'll discover she's got the warmest heart and these killer dimples when she smiles. While Emily's shorter than Grace, she's got these amazing curves and isn't afraid to show them off. She rocks this bold style. Think plunging necklines and mini skirts. That definitely gets the conservative neighbors talking. But she owns it, you know? Especially during summer, when she's rocking short shorts and crop tops that perfectly highlight her figure. I've got to admit, I can't help but notice her, and sometimes when she flashes those dimples, I get these butterflies that catch me off guard. Of course, I keep those thoughts strictly to myself. Grace and I love hitting the tennis courts at our local country club on weekends. Jake and Emily are tennis enthusiasts too, and while we often chat about the game, we haven't managed to play together yet. Recently, with our parents dropping not-so-subtle hints about grandkids, we've been trying to start a family. I've got to admit, our neighbors have added an unexpected spice to our intimate life. Like most American suburbs, the houses in our neighborhood are pretty close together. Our place and Jake and Emily's are practically touching, close enough that we can hear each other's conversations floating through the windows. With our bedrooms facing each other, we sometimes catch their intimate moments at night. The creaking of their bed frame carries through the walls, and surprisingly, these sounds have become quite the turn-on for us. Just last night, after coming home from date night and freshening up, we were lying in bed when we started hearing them next door. Their soft whispers drifted through the window. Emily's passionate moans filtered through the night air, her voice hitting higher notes than usual. The combination of Jake's deep growls and Emily's sweet sounds created this incredibly arousing symphony that got our hearts racing. Their rhythmic sounds painted an arousing scene in my mind. I could tell Emily was on top, taking charge. My imagination ran wild, picturing her curves in motion. Every time she let out one of those sweet moans, those signature dimples of hers deepening, I couldn't help but envision her voluptuous figure moving sensually. Jake's deep groans suggested he was completely lost in the moment with her. Though we'd planned on just getting some sleep, the heated atmosphere changed everything. Grace made the first move. "Can you hear them? They're so close," she whispered, squeezing my hand as she breathed into my ear. "I'm getting so turned on. You're listening too, aren't you?" Her warm breath sent shivers down my spine. "Yeah, kind of hard not to," I replied, wrapping my arms around her waist. "Is it getting to you too?" Grace answered with a deep, passionate kiss. We lost ourselves in each other's embrace, our breathing growing heavier. Our movements naturally synced with the sounds from next door. The unusual circumstances made everything feel more intense, more electric. It turned into one of our most passionate nights ever. Running into Jake and Emily the next day was intensely awkward. I couldn't help but think of Emily's moans from the night before, and her sensual presence kept popping into my head. But I played it cool and kept those thoughts to myself. Grace was blushing like crazy, and though Emily definitely picked up on it, we all just pretended everything was totally normal. Riding this wave of delicious tension, we decided to book a tennis court that weekend to release the tension. As we walked onto the tennis court, we spotted Jake and Emily practicing on the court next to us. Emily was wearing her characteristic tennis outfit, a cute little number that perfectly showed off her curves. Talk about perfect timing. Emily called out with that million-dollar smile of hers. "Hey Alec, Grace, you guys up for a game?" "Oh my gosh, yes. That would be awesome." Grace chimed in, practically bouncing with excitement. The doubles match was intense from the get-go. Emily was a force to be reckoned with, especially when she served, her dress flowing gracefully with each powerful motion. I couldn't help but notice how the sunlight caught the beads of sweat trailing down her neck. Grace was bringing her A-game too, moving with more fire than I'd ever seen, while Jake's powerful serves kept us all on our toes. We ended up clinching the win 6-4. During our victory celebration, Emily caught my eye with a playful wink and said, "Nice game out there, Alec." Those signature dimples of hers did that thing that always makes my stomach do backflips. Even as we were cooling down and hydrating courtside, I found myself stealing glances at her magnetic presence. After wrapping up our game, we all headed to the country club's spot to unwind. While the girls went their way, Jake and I hit the sauna for some guy talk. What started as casual tennis chat slowly drifted into more personal territory. Jake leaned in close, dropping his voice to barely above a whisper. "Hey man, just so you know, we can totally hear you guys at night. Especially when Emily gets, you know?" I felt my face flush, and not just from the heat. "Yeah, truth is, we've been leaving our window open on purpose lately. Something about hearing you guys, it really sets the mood." "Gotta admit," Jake continued, his eyes getting that certain look, "when I hear Grace's sweet little sounds, it really gets me going, makes my mind wander." I let out a nervous laugh. "Man, never thought we'd be having this kind of conversation." So what's Grace really like? Jake asked, curiosity evident in his voice. Well, she's actually super shy. In the beginning, she wouldn't even let me turn the lights on. Even now, she gets all flustered when I suggest trying anything new. But honestly, that innocent side of hers is incredibly sexy. Jake chuckled. Emily's totally different. She's always taking charge, keeping me on my toes. She has an adventurous side, always wanting to spice things up. There was something weirdly exciting about discussing our wives like this. It added this whole new dimension to our friendship. After a bit, Jake's expression turned serious. Listen, I've got something to run by you. I'm kind of into Grace. What would you think about maybe trying partner swapping this weekend? The suggestion caught me off guard, but I'd be lying if I said I hadn't been thinking about Emily's curves and those killer dimples. The idea definitely had my attention. We tentatively agreed, though obviously, we'd need our wives' blessing first. Later, over drinks, we nervously brought up the idea. So, we've got something to throw out there, Jake started cautiously. Oh, do tell, Emily said, eyes sparkling with interest. I cleared my throat, heart pounding. Well, what would you think about switching partners this weekend? The silence that followed felt eternal. Emily swirled her wine thoughtfully before breaking into a mischievous grin. Now that could be interesting. Count me in. Grace's cheeks went pink as she fidgeted with the tablecloth. Jake gave her one of his warm smiles. Hey, no pressure at all, Grace. It's completely up to you. After what felt like forever, Grace whispered, Okay, I'll try. We picked Saturday afternoon for our rendezvous. The anticipation was charged with excitement. Knowing we were about to step outside our comfort zones had us all buzzing with nervous energy. Every time our eyes met across the table, there was this crackling tension, this shared secret that made everything feel more intense. That Friday night, Grace and I had an especially intimate moment that felt deeper than ever before. We could sense a similar vibe coming from next door. The upcoming partner swap filled me with a mix of guilt and anticipation, but surprisingly, it also intensified my love for Grace. The way she breathed softly and her quiet, shaky voice reminded me just how precious our bond truly was. As the sounds from next door drifted through, we held each other closer, almost like we were reaffirming our connection. Later, as I lay in bed wide awake, my mind raced with thoughts about tomorrow. Grace had already drifted off, and watching her peaceful sleep, I questioned our decision. Emily's curves and confident demeanor excited me, but the thought of Grace with Jake stirred up some serious jealousy. Noticing the lights still on next door late into the night, I figured they were probably wrestling with similar emotions. The moonlight streaming through our window made Grace's blonde hair shimmer like silver. I pulled her close, hoping this adventure would only strengthen our relationship, not damage it. Saturday afternoon came, and my heart sank watching Grace walk toward Jake's house with hesitant steps. Each movement of her delicate shoulders toward their door felt like a punch to my gut. She turned back one last time with a shy smile, and I gave her what I hoped was a reassuring nod. Not long after, Emily showed up looking absolutely stunning. She'd really gone all out, wearing a tiny miniskirt and low-cut top that perfectly showcased her curves. When I opened the door, her perfume hit me like a wave, and her bold outfit left me temporarily tongue-tied. I'm kind of nervous, Emily admitted, her cheeks flushed. Yeah, me too. Make yourself at home, I managed, my voice a bit shaky. We started prepping dinner together, and man, the kitchen was filled with sexual tension. Our shoulders brushing, hands accidentally touching. At one point, while I was chopping onions, Emily stood behind me to show me the proper technique. Her warm breath on my neck sending shivers down my spine. The cramped kitchen kept forcing us together, and each time it happened, Emily would flash this playful little smile. I poured us some wine I'd specially picked out for the occasion. Things started off a bit awkwardly, but quickly eased into a comfortable vibe. While I couldn't help worrying about Grace, the wine seemed to work its magic on Emily, her eyes taking on a sultry gleam as she grew more daring. Before I knew it, she'd stretched her legs across my lap on the sofa and planted a kiss on my lips. Her boldness caught me off guard, but those adorable dimples of hers had me hooked. One thing led to another, and we found ourselves heading to the bedroom. Though it was usually my sanctuary with Grace, tonight it felt different, intimate in a whole new way with Emily. I cracked the window slightly, curiosity getting the better of me, before rejoining her. That night with Emily awakened something I'd never felt before. Her natural sensuality was magnetic. "Just listen," Emily whispered, and sure enough, Grace's soft moans drifted through from next door. Even though Grace seemed aware we might hear, it was clear she was thoroughly enjoying Jake's company. Emily and I pulled each other closer, the sounds of Grace's pleasure only intensifying our own passion. As we slowly undressed, Emily's curves came into view, her skin luminous in the moonlight. The sight of her sent electricity through my veins. This was unlike anything I'd experienced before. My whole body felt like it was on fire as Emily's intoxicating presence consumed me. She took charge exactly as I'd imagined she would. Emily straddled me with practiced grace, setting our rhythm as I followed her lead. Her expertise with foreplay sent me into waves of pleasure I never knew possible, as I became completely caught up in her touch. When her soft breasts brushed against my thighs, every nerve ending in my body lit up at once. Emily moved with natural rhythm, letting out these incredibly sexy little sighs. Her hair cascaded over my chest while the moonlight made her movements look ethereal, making everything feel even more sensual. We lost ourselves in each other completely, totally in sync with our breathing and movements. The sounds floating through the window only heightened our arousal, pushing us to multiple peaks of pleasure. That night was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, completely unforgettable. There was this moment when everything just clicked, and we connected on this incredibly deep level. Emily's sweet perfume and the silky feel of her skin were permanently etched in my memory. Our time together felt almost dreamlike. We'd found this perfect chemistry with each other. The next morning, Jake and Grace came over for brunch. Even though Grace was back beside me where she belonged, watching Jake and Emily sitting across from each other stirred up some complicated feelings of jealousy. Over brunch, we discussed our unconventional evening. To everyone's surprise, we'd all had an amazing time and seemed to understand each other on a deeper level now. Grace was glowing, Emily couldn't stop smiling, and Jake seemed more animated than his usual reserved self. While my encounter with Emily had been incredible, I couldn't shake this unease whenever I thought about Grace with Jake. Sure, seeing her happy was great, but knowing she'd been intimate with another man bothered me. The way her eyes lit up when she looked at Jake especially got under my skin. But strangely enough, seeing this new side of Grace only intensified my attraction to her. Knowing she'd been with someone else somehow made her even more desirable, and these mixed emotions took our passion to new heights. I found myself caught between jealousy and an overwhelming desire for my wife, turned on by how the experience had changed her. This secret arrangement had become something special for all of us. That night, Grace and I renewed our connection with an intensity we'd never known before. The biggest change? We started leaving our windows wide open, letting our passionate sounds carry between our homes. Instead of trying to stay quiet, we found ourselves getting more aroused by each other's pleasure. That night, all four of us shared an incredible connection, each couple in their own space but very aware of the other's presence.